The will she, won't she speculation has ended. Nancy Pelosi's plane has touched down in Taiwan. A visit that China sees as, quote, playing with fire, since Pelosi is the highest-ranking American representative to visit in more than 25 years, although this is not an official White House engagement. Now, the row has brought in global players, with Moscow saying that the visit is pure provocation. Indeed, tensions are running high in the region, with Chinese warplanes observed close to the border with Taiwan, evidence of Beijing's appetite for a military response there. Well, for more on that story, we're joined by our International Affairs editor, Armen Georgian. Armen, we are seeing now, of course, that plane arrived in Taiwan, and despite the angry rhetoric from China, tension at the border, this visit is going ahead. Was it a surprise, and why was it so important for Pelosi to go through with it?
No, the expectation had been mounting, especially over the last 24 hours, that she would do it, and it was there was a clear indication from Secretary of State Antony Blinken that it was very likely when he said, if she decides to do it, that's her business. So initially, you remember President Biden, he expressed, I think, at least implicitly, a hope that she wouldn't go there because the White House didn't want to sort of inflame tensions. But that then changed. So there have been a few mixed signals, which I suppose in a way you could say reflect this strategic ambiguity that the US has as a policy towards Taiwan. It is obviously wants to show support for Taiwan. It does want to contain China and any relationship that it has in Asia which could contain China is something that the US is cultivating. That's very obvious. In terms of what was the other part of your question?
Well, how much of a surprise it was and why it's so important. What's at stake here? As you mentioned, the symbolism is powerful.
Yeah, the symbolism is powerful because she is a voice which is often heard on foreign relations as well as on domestic matters. She's the Speaker of the House of Representatives. As we've said, no US Speaker of the House has come to Taiwan in 25 years. And, you know, the last visit came actually not long after the last major crisis in the Taiwan Strait in the late 1990s. So we'll have to see what militarily comes out this time. We've heard from the Taiwanese, the Ministry of Defense, that some types of Chinese aircraft have crossed the Taiwan Strait, but without really giving details. So we don't know exactly where they are right now. But we did hear that earlier in the day, Chinese warplanes and vessels touched upon something called the median line, which is quite a rare event. So it's an evolving situation. We don't really know what the Chinese response is going to be. Bear in mind, it's now quite late. It's just after 11 o'clock in the evening in Taipei. If she's going to be there for the whole day tomorrow, we'll have to really watch the space for more Chinese military movements.
Indeed. Briefly, Armen, just is the question on everyone's mind, I suppose. What does come next, potentially?
Well, I suppose the question is, has the US made contingency plans in case something goes wrong at this point? I mean, I don't just mean, last minute things like scrambling jets from Japan to Taiwan or something along those lines, but does it actually have a plan? I would have thought it does have various plans in case, because an accident, in theory, could happen at any time, with or without Pelosi's visit. Something could happen between Taiwanese and Chinese militaries before, during, or after this visit. So the US, I'm sure, does have ways of responding to that. But I suppose the deeper question is, if the worst comes to the worst, does the US actually have the wherewithal to manage two major conflicts while it's still promising more aid, if necessary, to Ukraine, deliveries of more heavy weapons and so forth? That's a pretty big stretch. So I suspect the US will be looking for some sort of de-escalation if things do get more tense over the next 24 hours, which, as we've heard from, as I said, from those Taiwanese Defense Ministry sources, it does seem as though things could certainly become more tense militarily, but exactly where all that goes, we just can't really predict.
Thank you very much, Armen Georgian, there with some insight on the situation in Taiwan.